Every profession has a boring task to accomplish. That when you think about it, you just get sick, you get tired, you don't even want to do it. And the same thing applies with the teaching profession. Guess what the most boring task in the teaching profession is? Every teacher, if you're a teacher listening to me, you will easily connect to what I'm about to say right now. It has to do with marking scripts. It is so boring and painstaking that institutions and educational boards pay people huge sums of money, even internationally, to mark scripts. So in this video, I'm going to share with you what you can do, the skills that you can develop to become an effective teacher when it comes to marking scripts faster and accurately. In order for you to be effective in marking scripts, one of the things you have to do is develop or create a marking guide. A marking guide is so paramount when it comes to marking effectively and also marking faster. The question is, when do you produce a marking guide? Many teachers make the mistake of producing a marking guide after they have given the test or the exam or the evaluation. On the contrary, a marking guide is supposed to be prepared alongside the test questions. That means when you're setting the exam or setting the test, you also have to prepare the marking guide alongside. The advantage of this method is that it helps you to internalize the content of the marking guide and the marks alongside. And when you internalize the marking guide, when it's time for you to start marking the scripts, it becomes very easy because you don't always have to refer to the marking guide before you determine how many marks you're going to give to the students. And secondly, when you have your marking guide internalized and you have all the marks allocated for each question, it becomes easy for you to mark without bias. When you find teachers who mark scripts and then students come after, they're complaining, oh, you gave this person 2 marks, you gave me just 1 mark, why is this question wrong when it was correct, and all of that. Those complaints often come from teachers who mark scripts without marking guides. And also, when you mark without a marking guide, there's a temptation that you're likely to mark twice, or you will soil the scripts of the students because you will keep changing the marks because students keep popping up with issues that they have in their marking. So having a marking guide is very paramount to the success of every teacher. Secondly, if you're a teacher and you want to mark faster, especially with multiple choice questions, one of the things you can do is you could go online and you print an answer sheet that has space for A, B, C, D, if at all your options are between A to D. Rather than allowing the students to circle the right option on the question paper, it's better to have a separate answer sheet with spaces allocated for A, B, C, D, so that when the students are answering the questions, they simply put the right letter in the column where it needs to be next to the question. The advantage of this method is that when students write out their answers on an answer sheet, when marking it becomes very easy because you can easily flip through the marking guide and then you memorize the letters and you go faster. But if you have to mark from the question paper, the tendency is that you will have to be flipping and turning papers up and down, and just doing that alone wastes a lot of time. Another thing you can get around with marking multiple choice questions is the advancement of technology right now. So you have so many softwares, artificial intelligence that mark scripts automatically. Yes, it is good. One of my favorite is Google Forms. The problem with Google Forms, or the task with Google Forms, is that you have to set the questions and the marking guide and mount it on the software. And once you do that, that's where the dirty job is. Once you're able to set the questions and mount it on Google Forms together with the answers, once you deliver the test, if they're writing the test online or electronically, as soon as they answer the questions, Google Forms mark the questions by itself. There are so many paid versions and there are so many free versions online you can research. If you don't know how to use Google Forms, it's so easy. All you need to do is go online, get a tutorial and watch it from YouTube, and you will learn how to do it. That's how you can go about that. However, there is a limitation with using artificial intelligence when it comes to marking scripts. It is possible for multiple choice questions, but as we all know, a computer or a robot cannot replace human intelligence when it comes to marking free response questions, because it needs the human input to understand the context a student has written, to understand the context and provide the right mark. So if you want to mark scripts using Google Forms and they are free response questions, you will have problems because it will require an exact answer. The software will require an exact answer from what the student has written, and this discrepancy might make it to mark the student's question wrong when it was indeed correct. So that's one way you can go about it. But when it has to do with marking free response questions or essay questions, one of the things you can do to be effective in marking is try as much as possible to mark. Don't mark script by script, but rather you can mark page by page, or question by question. What do I mean by this? Marking scripts separately takes a lot of time as compared to marking page 1 for all the students, and then once you're done, you mark page 2 for all the students. Once you're done with page 2, you mark page 3 for each student. The advantage of this method, I learned it when I was marking, when I mark IB, International Baccalaureate. That's how we mark in terms of questions. That's, you take question 2 and you mark for one rescript, you mark just question 2, or you mark just page 1. That's better because once you mark just page 1 for all the students, it gives you an idea. It helps you to remember the marking guide of that particular page or particular question very well. And you are consistent in marking because you will not mix up the marks. The marks that you give for one person is going to be the same because you already understand the trend. And then you do that again, when you move to the next page or the next question, you keep internalizing the marking guide for that particular question. But the tendency is, if you mark script by script, that means you finish one script before you pick up another script, it's going to be very difficult because you will have the marking guide for several questions. You have the marking guide or the answers for several questions in your mind, and you might miss up a little thing and there might be some inconsistency elsewhere. So the best way to mark is that you mark page by page. That means you mark one page for each student script, and then you move to the next student script and you mark that page, and then you have to go back again over and over like a cycle. In that way, marking is effective, consistent, and precise. If you are marking a project-based question, I will advise that you use a rubric. There are so many rubrics online. You can just simply download a template and then you modify it to suit your test, and then you try to see how you can use the rubric and come up with accurate evaluation of the students. So project-based, don't just mark project-based like you would mark free response questions or multiple choice. Try to come up with a rubric to facilitate your marking. So these are some of the things that you can do to make sure that marking is easy and relaxed for you. But let me give you some tips, some do's and some don'ts that you shouldn't do so that you can enjoy your marking. One of the things you need to do is, when you're marking, try as much as possible to find a comfortable space. Sit on the table. Don't mark on the bed or lying down. Sit on the table, sit relaxed in the right upright position, have your pen and your materials, and you mark. And if possible, you can even play some cool instrumental music at the background when you're marking, so that you can make this thing fun and interesting. Don't make marking stress. Just find the best time that you have, sit on the table, and then sit upright, get your pen, get some music around the background, get some snacks if you can, and then just enjoy the ride as you're marking. Another advice I would give you if you want to mark effectively and correctly is that do not mark scripts when you are tired. You need to know the kind of person you are. You need to know your prime productive time. Are you an early morning person, afternoon person, or a night owl? You need to know when you are most productive. Mark papers when you are most productive. It's frustrating to mark papers and you're sleeping. You're marking papers and you're sleeping. You're likely going to make mistakes. So don't mark papers when you're tired. When you're tired, exhausted for the whole day, you pick up papers and you're trying to mark them. It's really going to frustrate you. So choose the best time when you feel relaxed and comfortable to mark papers. Another advice about marking papers is that do not give papers to your spouse or to students to mark them for you, because the advantage of you marking the papers of the students is that you get to understand the stress and the trouble or the challenges that the students are facing, so that when you're doing corrections in class, you can easily pinpoint the areas that needs to be retaught because the students probably did not understand. Another advantage or another advice on marking scripts effectively and faster is that when you're marking scripts, it's good to start with the script of the smartest kid in class. Why do I say so? It gives you a clue. If you're marking the script of the smartest student in class and you realize that that student fails a particular question, it is a red flag, because it signals that there's something wrong with that question. So you would have to mark across and see whether other students understood that question effectively. It will give you a clue whether you taught that concept effectively or not, because if a student fails that question, it means there's a problem somewhere. So when you're marking, it's advisable to start with the script of the smartest student. Another thing you can do to facilitate your marking is that you have to plan your marking. And planning your marking here means you mark in batches. That means you mark in pieces. I understand how it feels to mark papers for more than 100 students in class. I know there are some teachers who have this problem. They have about 100 students in class. They get so frustrated that at times they set superficial questions and they don't evaluate students deeply because they are afraid of marking. What I can advise you is that mark in batches, because if you have 100 students and you have 100 scripts to mark, plan to mark those scripts for about 3 to 5 days. So if you plan to mark it for 5 days, you divide 5 by 100, you're gonna have 20. So each day plan to mark just 20 scripts. Don't go above 20 scripts. Mark in batches to facilitate the work so it doesn't feel frustrating. Because if you want to mark scripts at a go, and I've been there before, at times you pick up a bunch of papers, you're marking and then you're counting to see the number of papers that are left because you want your adrenaline to say or whatever to say, oh, finally I finished marking. So please plan to mark in batches. Anything you do in bits, you do it effectively and you do it very well. So don't try to mark all 100 papers at a go. It will feel frustrating at some point. So one of the things I would want us to understand is that marking, like I said before, it's really stressful. It's painful. No teacher likes it, but it's a must-do activity we can't do without. So I want to encourage you that if you want to be an effective marker, one of the things you need to do, like I said, with multiple choice questions, like I earlier said before, print out a separate answer sheet to facilitate your marking. If you're dealing with free response questions, mark page by page. Mark page by page per script. Don't mark script by script. You can mark question by question. Most importantly, don't forget to produce a marking guide at the time that you are setting the questions. And also remember that marking, if you want to make it fun, leisure, easy, mark while you're sitting in an upright position. Mark while you're having fun, playing some cool music at the background, and then relax and have fun when you're marking so that this thing doesn't get bogged up in your mind. Thank you very much for listening. Please do not forget to subscribe, and we're going to have a lot of discussions. If you have other ways or other strategies on how to mark effectively and faster, please do not hesitate to share with us at the comment section below. Thank you very much, and this was Teaching Made Easy.
When he marks his scripts, it's usually very fair to us. Sometimes there's a lot of people that like to start screaming for some reason. I just accept my grade because whenever he gives me, that's life, move on. But yeah, overall, he's a pretty good teacher and he's fun.
I feel like his way of marking is fair for everyone because everyone has different levels, has different ways of learning and different ways of like writing quizzes or anything. So his way of marking is fair because he has this type of like scheme he does. I don't know if you guys get what I mean, but like, yeah.